So because we're just entering Lent, and our Lenten series this year is focused on creation care for the environment, care for the environment, I wanted to go back to creation and talk about one of those stories. One of the stories in creation is all about Adam and Eve. So last week we talked about how there are stories in the Bible that are historical, ones that happened exactly as they were written, and other stories that are metaphorical. So the stories are told in one way, but the meaning is deeper. And so you have to look deeper into the story to figure out why they wrote it down and put it in the Bible. And one of those stories is Adam and Eve. So the story of Adam and Eve is that Adam and Eve were in paradise with God. They had everything that they needed. They were naked. They didn't know they were naked. And a serpent comes along and tempts them and says, you can eat from that tree that God told you not to eat from, and you will be just like God. You will know everything that God knows. And it was so tempting to Adam and Eve that Eve went over and took the fruit and ate of it and gave it to Adam. A lot of churches focus on that fact that Eve took it first. Doesn't matter. They both ate of it. And when they ate of it, their eyes were opened. They were opened to what God could see. They knew then all about right and wrong, about good and evil. And once they knew about right and wrong, about good and evil, they realized that they were naked and they hid from God in the garden. And God came back and said, where are you? Where are you hiding? And God found them. And then they were clothed. And then God booted them out of the garden and said, because you have done this, women, you will experience pain in childbirth. I think that that was put in there because most women at that time would have childbirth. They would have kids, so they would experience that pain. I'll tell you that we do still experience pain in childbirth. And if anybody ever said, well, you shouldn't have eaten that fruit, a woman would just probably hurt you. And then to the men, they said, you will work really hard and you will experience pain in your work, because back in those times, it was a patriarchal society. That means it was led by the men. They were the workers. You will toil in the fields. It will be hard for you in your work, okay? So once they knew all that, what God knew about right and wrong, they couldn't go back to that paradise of not knowing. They couldn't go back in time to when they didn't know about right and wrong. So when I think about that story, and some of the things that I've read really translate to us nowadays, okay? So when we talk about original sin in the Bible, they say that because Adam and Eve sinned, they went against God, that every baby that's born comes with original sin. Every baby that's born comes with that little black mark. But that's not true. We come with an original blessing. Every child that is born into the world comes with God inside them, comes with the Spirit of God. We were given that blessing from God, okay? So you think about it, babies are fully connected to God when they're born. Strong connection. Babies can do no wrong. They don't know anything about right and wrong. You could not even lie until you're about 3 years old. Not possible. 2.5, not able to lie. 3 years old, you know that you can trick someone. That's when you first start getting it. When you all were young, when you were toddlers, it was hard for your parents to keep clothes on you because you loved being naked. You didn't realize that we don't really do that when you get to a certain age. When you turn about 7, okay, when you really start to understand right and wrong, good and evil, that you can make choices to do the wrong thing, you start to cover yourself up. You start to realize, oh my gosh, I'm naked, and you don't want anybody to see you naked. Okay, that's when you really start to get that realization. Good and evil, right and wrong, I can choose. And when you're about 9, parents call that the you're not the boss of me stage. You can't tell me what to do. And parents freak out because at that point, you get to choose whether you sin or whether you don't sin. And when I was your age, when I loved going to church, the only time I didn't like going to church was when they talked about me being a sinner. Because I felt dirty when they said that. I felt crummy about myself. I hated that. I'm not a sinner, I said. Really what sin means is that you are choosing to separate from God. You are making a choice that separates you from the Creator. When you lie, you are not connected to God. When you steal, take something that's not yours, you are not connected to God. When you dishonor your parents and you say, no, I will not do that, you are disconnected from God, and that is sinning. So when you're 9 years old, when you're 7 years old, you have a choice to make. All the way up until you're 96, 97, you have a choice. Whether you're going to sin and disconnect yourself from God, separate separate yourself from God or stay connected by doing the right thing. And that's what that story talks about. There are other ways to describe it. Some stories describe it as Adam and Eve representing Israel, and Israel's God's people choosing to disobey God and then walk with God, and then disobey God and then walk with God. There's a lot of ways to look at that story, but it's not about an apple on a tree. Okay, so pray with me. Gracious God, we thank you for the Bible. As hard as it is to read sometimes because the meanings are buried so deeply, help us to discern, to figure out what lies behind those stories. Amen.